The chandeliers of the Starlight estate sparkled as though they were the very stars plucked from the heavens. The sprawling mansion, a monument to the absurd wealth of Jamie Kensington III, buzzed with excitement. Tonight was the annual Kensington Winter Gala, the most exclusive social event of the season, attended by moguls, celebrities, and influencers. It was the kind of affair where champagne flowed like rivers, diamonds outshone the moon, and whispers held more value than gold. Standing at the grand entrance, Jamie, with his salt and pepper hair and easy smile, greeted guests with practiced charm. His wife, Vanessa Kensington, was a vision in crimson silk, her sharp features enhanced by an air of icy dominance. She was the queen of this glittering kingdom, yet her power came less from her beauty and more from her knack for manipulation. Among the sea of tuxedos and evening gowns, no one spared a glance for Rosa Martinez, the Kensingtons' maid. Rosa was a petite woman in her late 20s, with dark hair always tied in a neat bun and an expression that rarely betrayed her thoughts. She darted around the ballroom, unseen but indispensable, carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres, refilling glasses, and ensuring the evening unfolded flawlessly. But Rosa wasn't just a maid. Few knew her story, an immigrant who had studied architecture in her home country, only to be forced to flee with her family when political turmoil struck. Despite her quiet demeanor, Rosa had a steely determination and a sharp intellect, qualities that Vanessa despised. To Vanessa, Rosa was just another servant, a piece of the background that should remain invisible. The humiliation. The night reached its crescendo during Vanessa's speech, delivered from the top of the grand staircase. With a crystal flute of champagne in hand, she addressed the crowd, her voice cutting through the hum of conversation. Tonight, we celebrate excellence, innovation, and, of course, the generosity that makes this community so extraordinary, Vanessa declared, her tone dripping with self-importance. The crowd cheered, but Rosa, balancing a tray of crystal glasses, winced as Vanessa's words echoed through the cavernous hall. Vanessa's gaze swept over the crowd, landing on Rosa. Her lips curled into a cold smile. And of course, she continued, none of this would be possible without the help of our staff. Rosa, dear, come forward. A hush fell over the room. Rosa froze, her cheeks burning as every eye turned toward her. Vanessa's voice had a saccharine edge, the kind that concealed daggers. Reluctantly, Rosa stepped forward, clutching her tray. Vanessa's smile widened, though her eyes gleamed with malice. Such diligence, Vanessa cooed. But, my dear, do try not to embarrass us with those clumsy little hands of yours. Remember the vase from last week. The crowd chuckled softly, and Rosa's heart sank. Rosa stood silently, her jaw tight. The room felt suffocating, the laughter like needles against her skin. But she didn't respond, not yet. 1 minute later, as Vanessa's laughter echoed through the hall, Rosa took a steadying breath. A flicker of determination lit her eyes, and she carefully set the tray down on a nearby table. Straightening her back, she stepped forward, her voice steady but resonant enough to carry through the room. Mrs. Kensington, Rosa said, her accent soft but clear. Thank you for recognizing me. I'd like to take this moment to acknowledge something as well. The crowd leaned in, intrigued. Vanessa's smile faltered. You see, Rosa continued, the vase from last week wasn't just any vase. It was a priceless Ming Dynasty artifact, a generous loan from the Kensington Foundation to a museum exhibit. And when I accidentally broke it, I didn't just apologize. I did something more. Vanessa blinked, visibly unnerved. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice sharpening. Rosa smiled, a calm yet electrifying expression. I contacted a conservator and arranged for its immediate restoration. It's as good as new, and the museum director even praised the effort. I did this because I cared deeply about preserving beauty, history, and the reputation of this household. Perhaps, Mrs. Kensington, what you really need is someone who handles problems, not just criticizes them. The room was silent. Vanessa's cheeks turned a deep red. Jamie, standing nearby, hid a grin behind his glass of scotch, foreshadowing the ripple effect. As the applause broke out, Rosa quietly stepped back, her heart pounding. But this was just the beginning. While Vanessa seethed, something larger was set in motion. Unbeknownst to Rosa, her defiant response had captured the attention of more than one influential guest. In the coming days, whispers about the maid with a backbone would echo through the socialite circles. But what none of them knew yet was that Rosa's life was about to change in ways no one could predict. Cliffhanger. As the night wore on, Rosa returned to her duties, seemingly unfazed by the incident. Yet, when Jamie Kensington approached her later with a cryptic comment, "I think you're wasted here," she felt the first tremor of a seismic shift. Little did she know, Vanessa wasn't done with her either. And in the world of the wealthy, grudges often came with devastating consequences. The days following the gala were anything but ordinary for Rosa. The fallout from her bold stand against Vanessa rippled through the Kensington mansion in ways she hadn't anticipated. The staff, many of whom had witnessed years of Vanessa's unrelenting arrogance, now looked at Rosa with a mix of admiration and disbelief. "She really put Mrs. Kensington in her place," murmured Anna, the head cook, as she kneaded dough in the kitchen. "Brave or foolish?" muttered Mark, the chauffeur. "Vanessa doesn't forgive easily. Rosa might have just made things harder for herself." Vanessa's fury. Upstairs, Vanessa was pacing her gilded bedroom, her stilettos clicking against the polished marble floor. The evening sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, but her mood was anything but sunny. "She made a mockery of me," Vanessa hissed, slamming her palm against a mahogany dresser. In front of everyone, Jamie, seated casually on a tufted armchair, swirled his scotch. "You did call her out in front of a crowd, Vanessa. What did you expect?" Vanessa shot him a venomous glare. "Don't start, Jamie. I'll handle her." Jamie chuckled, unfazed. "Careful, darling. You might end up on the wrong side of this." "What's that supposed to mean?" Vanessa snapped, crossing her arms. "Nothing." Jamie stood and drained his glass. "Just don't underestimate people who have less to lose. They're often the ones who surprise you." Vanessa's lips tightened as Jamie left the room. Her husband's cryptic warning only fueled her determination. Rosa wasn't going to get away with it. An unexpected invitation. Rosa tried to move on from the gala debacle, burying herself in her work. But the attention she had drawn seemed to follow her. A few days later, an unexpected visitor arrived at the mansion. A woman named Emily St. Clair, one of the most influential art curators in the city and a guest at the gala. Emily was elegance personified, with her silver hair swept back in a chic bun and a pair of horn-rimmed glasses perched on her nose. She requested to speak with Rosa directly, much to Vanessa's barely concealed irritation. "Why would someone like you need to speak with my maid?" Vanessa asked with a thin smile. Emily adjusted her glasses, unfazed. "Because she's not just a maid." Her quick thinking and attention to detail saved that face, something no one else here seemed capable of doing. "I'd like to offer her a position at the museum." Vanessa's expression froze, but Rosa was equally stunned. "Me? At the museum?" Rosa stammered. "Yes," Emily said warmly. "You seem to have a keen eye for preservation. With some training, I think you could be an excellent addition to our team." Before Rosa could respond, Vanessa stepped in, her voice dripping with sweetness. "That's a lovely offer, but I'm afraid Rosa is indispensable to us. Isn't that right, Rosa?" Rosa hesitated, her heart pounding. She felt trapped under Vanessa's gaze, but Emily wasn't backing down. "Think about it," Emily said, handing Rosa a card. "You deserve more, my dear." As Emily left, Vanessa turned to Rosa, her smile vanishing. "Don't get any ideas. Your place is here, and it's not up for negotiation." The mysterious note. That evening, Rosa sat alone in her small room above the garage, staring at the card Emily had given her. Part of her longed to accept the curator's offer and leave the Kensingtons behind. But how could she? Her family depended on her income, And Vanessa wouldn't make it easy. As she debated her next move, she noticed a folded piece of paper slipped under her door. Frowning, she picked it up and unfolded it. The note was written in an elegant but unfamiliar hand. "You're stronger than you realize. Don't let her hold you back. Someone like you deserves more." A friend. Rosa's heart raced. Who had sent the note? And why? Vanessa's scheme. Meanwhile, Vanessa was already planning her next move. She couldn't risk losing Rosa, not because she valued her work, but because of the power dynamics at play. Rosa's defiance at the gala had chipped away at Vanessa's carefully curated image. If Rosa left on her own terms, it would be a loss Vanessa couldn't stomach. Sitting at her desk, Vanessa dialed a number. "Mr. Howard," she said smoothly, addressing the Kensington's family lawyer. "I need your help drafting a new contract for one of our employees. Something binding." Her lips curved into a cold smile. If Rosa thought she could simply walk away, she was sorely mistaken. Jamie's quiet intervention. Unbeknownst to Vanessa, Jamie had been observing everything with keen interest. Despite his easygoing demeanor, Jamie was far from naive. He had always known Vanessa's sharp tongue and domineering nature were her greatest weaknesses. Rosa's unyielding courage had intrigued him, and Jamie had a growing sense that Rosa might be the key to dismantling Vanessa's toxic influence, both in their household and beyond. One evening, Jamie found Rosa in the library, meticulously dusting the shelves. "Rosa," he said, his voice soft but purposeful. She turned, startled. "Mr. Kensington, I didn't hear you come in." Jamie leaned casually against the doorframe. "You've impressed a lot of people lately, myself included." Rosa blinked, unsure how to respond. "I'm just doing my job." Jamie smirked. "You're doing far more than that. Let me ask you something. If you could do anything, what would it be?" Rosa hesitated, then said quietly, "I'd design buildings, homes that people could feel safe in." Jamie nodded, as though he had expected that answer. "Good. Hold on to that dream, Rosa. Don't let anyone, especially Vanessa, take it from you." As Jamie left, Rosa felt a spark of hope flicker in her chest. For the first time, she began to wonder if escaping the Kensington's gilded cage was truly possible. Cliffhanger. Late that night, Rosa woke to the sound of shuffling footsteps outside her door. When she opened it, the hallway was empty, but the mysterious note from earlier was gone. Someone was watching her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far larger than she could comprehend. The following days at the Kensington estate were marked by a palpable tension. Vanessa was colder than usual, her clipped orders accompanied by sharp glares in Rosa's direction. Jamie, on the other hand, continued to offer Rosa cryptic encouragement whenever their paths crossed. Rosa couldn't shake the feeling that she was caught between two vastly different forces, both of which had their own plans for her future. And then there was the note, mysterious, encouraging, and now missing. Rosa couldn't figure out who had written it or why someone had stolen it from her room. The incident unsettled her, but she didn't have time to dwell on it. The Kensingtons' lives demanded constant attention, and Rosa's days were filled with endless tasks. The contract trap. Vanessa's plan was finally set in motion. One afternoon, she called Rosa into her study, a luxurious room lined with dark oak paneling and leather-bound books that Vanessa had probably never read. "Rosa," Vanessa began, her tone deceptively warm, "I've been thinking about your future here, and I want to offer you something generous." Rosa raised an eyebrow, wary. "What do you mean, Mrs. Kensington?" Vanessa slid a crisp stack of papers across the desk. "This is a revised employment contract. It formalizes your role and comes with a raise. I thought it was the least I could do after that unfortunate misunderstanding at the gala." Rosa glanced at the document. The salary increase was tempting, more than she had dared to hope for, but something about Vanessa's smug smile made her stomach twist. "Take your time," Vanessa said, leaning back in her chair, "but I'd advise you to sign sooner rather than later. Opportunities like this don't come often." Rosa nodded and left the study, the contract clutched tightly in her hands. Back in her room, she read it carefully, her unease growing with every clause. The new terms locked her into a multi-year agreement with severe penalties for early termination. It was a golden cage, designed to keep her tied to the Kensingtons indefinitely. A chance encounter. Unsure of what to do, Rosa decided to clear her head. She slipped out of the mansion and walked into the expansive gardens, a labyrinth of perfectly manicured hedges and fountains. As she wandered, she spotted someone sitting on a stone bench near the rose garden. Emily St. Clair. Ms. St. Clair, Rosa called, surprised. Emily looked up, her serene expression breaking into a warm smile. Rosa, I was hoping to see you again. Rosa approached, clutching the contract in her hands. What are you doing here? Jamie invited me for tea, Emily said with a knowing glint in her eye. But I suspect he had other motives. How are you holding up? Rosa hesitated, then held out the contract. Mrs. Kensington gave me this. Feels wrong. Emily scanned the document, her brow furrowing. She's trying to trap you. This isn't a job offer. It's a leash. Rosa sighed. I thought so, but I can't just walk away. My family depends on this job. Emily placed a reassuring hand on Rosa's arm. You have more allies than you realize. Don't let fear hold you back. Vanessa's desperation. Later that evening, Vanessa discovered Emily's visit. Her fury was immediate and volcanic. Jamie, she snapped, storming into the lounge where her husband was reading the paper. What is Emily doing here? Are you scheming behind my back? Jamie looked up, unfazed. Scheming? Vanessa, you make it sound so sinister. Emily simply enjoys good tea and good company. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. Don't play coy with me. You've been acting strangely ever since that maid embarrassed me. I won't let you undermine me in my own home. Jamie set down his paper and met her gaze evenly. Your paranoia is showing, darling. Maybe you should focus less on controlling Rosa and more on reflecting why you feel so threatened by her. Vanessa clenched her fists, her face a mask of cold rage. You'll regret this, Jamie. The letter from home. That night, Rosa received a letter from her younger brother, Miguel. He was studying engineering on a partial scholarship, but his part-time job had fallen through, and he needed help covering tuition. Rosa's heart ached as she read his words. She had always promised to support him, but her savings were slim, and the contracts raised suddenly seemed harder to refuse. As she stared at the letter, another knock came at her door. This time it was Jamie. May I come in? He asked. Rosa nodded, surprised. Of course, Mr. Kensington. Jamie stepped inside, his hands in his pockets. I wanted to apologize for Vanessa. She has a way of making life difficult. Rosa managed a small smile. I've noticed. Jamie hesitated, then said, I heard about the contract. Don't sign it. Rosa frowned. Why not? I don't have many options. You're underestimating your value, Jamie said, and overestimating her power. If you sign that, you'll be giving up your freedom. Let me help you. Rosa was taken aback. Why would you help me? Jamie's gaze was steady. Because I see potential in you, Rosa. You don't belong here as a servant. You belong in a place where your talents can shine. A shocking revelation. The next morning, Rosa was summoned to the kitchen, where Anna handed her an envelope. This came for you, the cook said, her expression puzzled. Rosa opened the envelope to find a bank statement inside. Her eyes widened. Someone had anonymously deposited a substantial sum into her account, enough to cover her brother's tuition and then some. Her hands trembled as she read the attached note. For your family, from someone who believes in you. The timing was too coincidental. Had Jamie done this? Or was it Emily? Either way, it felt like a lifeline. Vanessa's counterstrike. Unbeknownst to Rosa, Vanessa had been watching her closely. When she learned about the mysterious deposit, she was livid. She didn't know who was undermining her, but she knew one thing. Rosa had to be put in her place. Vanessa called a meeting with the household staff and berated Rosa in front of everyone, accusing her of stealing. I trusted you, Vanessa spat. And this is how you repay me? By taking advantage of my generosity. The staff exchanged uneasy glances, but Rosa stood her ground. I've stolen nothing, Mrs. Kensington, she said firmly. And I don't need to explain myself to you. The tension in the room was thick, and Vanessa's face darkened. Then perhaps it's time we reconsider your position here. Cliffhanger. Just as Vanessa was about to issue her final ultimatum, the sound of a phone ringing interrupted the standoff. It was Jamie's phone, and he answered it with a look of surprise. Really? Jamie said, glancing at Rosa. You'll want to hear this. He put the call on speaker, and a voice echoed through the room. This is Emily St. Clair. I'm calling to formally offer Rosa Martinez a position at the museum. Effective immediately. Vanessa's jaw dropped, and the room erupted in whispers. Rosa's heart raced as the weight of the moment sank in. But before she could respond, Vanessa turned to Jamie, her eyes blazing. This is your doing, isn't it? Jamie merely smiled. Who's paranoid now, Vanessa? The tension in the room was electric as Emily St. Clair's voice hung in the air. Rosa's mind raced, struggling to process the sudden shift. Vanessa's glare could have scorched steel, but Jamie's calm demeanor was almost infuriatingly confident. Well, Rosa, Jamie said with a slight smirk. What do you say? All eyes turned to Rosa, and for a brief moment, time seemed to stop. She felt a pang of doubt. Could she really take this leap? But then she thought of Miguel, of her dream to design, of the quiet note that urged her to recognize her strength. I accept, Rosa said, her voice steady. The room erupted in a mix of gasps and murmurs. Vanessa's face turned an alarming shade of red. You ungrateful! Rosa cut her off, her tone calm but firm. I've worked hard here, Mrs. Kensington, and I've treated this household with respect. But I've always known I was meant for more than this. Thank you for helping me realize that. The staff exchanged wide-eyed glances. Some were hiding smirks, delighted by Rosa's uncharacteristic boldness. Jamie chuckled softly, raising his glass of water as if to toast her. Vanessa was momentarily speechless, which was a sight to behold. Finally, she snapped, Fine, but don't expect glowing references, and don't even think about returning when you fail. Rosa smiled, unfazed. Thank you for your concern, Mrs. Kensington, but I don't plan to fail. The farewell that wasn't. That night, Rosa packed her belongings into a single suitcase, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. She had worked for the Kensingtons for years, and while she wouldn't miss Vanessa, she felt a pang of sorrow leaving behind the staff who had become her surrogate family. Anna cried openly as Rosa hugged her goodbye, and Mark handed her a small notebook filled with hand-drawn sketches of classic cars, his quiet way of saying he believed in her talent. As she left the servants' quarters for the last time, she saw Jamie waiting for her in the hallway. He leaned casually against the wall, holding an envelope. This is for you, Jamie said, handing it to her. Rosa frowned. What is it? Think of it as an investment, Jamie said cryptically. I believe in you. When Rosa opened the envelope, she was stunned. Inside was a check with an amount so generous it made her knees weak. I can't accept this, Rosa protested. Jamie shook his head. It's not a gift. It's a loan. Pay it back when you're ready if you want to, but don't let pride get in the way of your dreams. Tears welled in Rosa's eyes as she nodded. Thank you, Mr. Kensington. I don't know how to repay you. Jamie smiled. Just make something of yourself, Rosa. That'll be thanks enough. Vanessa's last-ditch effort. As Rosa left the estate, Vanessa was far from done. Fueled by humiliation and a simmering grudge, she picked up the phone and made a call. I want you to find out everything you can about her, Vanessa said to the private investigator on the other end. Where she's going, who she's meeting, everything. The investigator hesitated. Is this strictly legal, Mrs. Kensington? Vanessa's tone was ice-cold. I'm paying you to find dirt, not ask questions. Vanessa wasn't just bitter about Rosa leaving. She was terrified that Rosa's success would reflect poorly on her, exposing Vanessa as the villain she truly was. And Vanessa wasn't about to let that happen. The museum's hidden layers. Rosa's first day at the museum felt like stepping into a dream. The building itself was an architectural marvel, all glass and steel with sunlight streaming through towering windows. Emily St. Clair greeted her warmly, introducing Rosa to her new colleagues and showing her around the restoration lab. "This is where the magic happens," Emily said, gesturing to a room filled with ancient artifacts and delicate tools. "You'll start as an assistant, but I have a feeling you'll move up quickly." Rosa felt a swell of gratitude and determination. This was her chance to prove herself, and she wasn't going to waste it. But it wasn't long before Rosa began to notice strange undercurrents in the museum. Some staff members seemed nervous, whispering in corners and glancing over their shoulders. One evening, Rosa overheard a heated argument between Emily and another curator, their voices low but tense. "It's too risky," the man hissed. "If the board finds out." "They won't," Emily snapped. "And even if they do, I'll handle it." Rosa couldn't shake the feeling that she had stepped into something far more complex than she'd anticipated. A familiar face. A week into her new job, Rosa was working late in the restoration lab when she heard a knock on the door. To her surprise, it was Jamie. "Mr. Kensington?" she said, startled. "What are you doing here?" Jamie grinned. "Call me Jamie, and I'm here to see how my investment is doing." Rosa laughed, shaking her head. "I think it's going well, but it's only been a week." Jamie stepped inside, his expression turning more serious. "I also came to warn you. Vanessa's not going to let this go. She's already hired someone to dig into your past." Rosa's stomach dropped. "Why would she do that?" "Because she's petty and can't stand losing," Jamie said bluntly. "But don't worry, I'll handle her." Rosa nodded, grateful but uneasy. Vanessa's reach seemed endless, and the thought of her prying into Rosa's life was deeply unsettling. An unexpected opportunity. Despite the challenges, Rosa's talent quickly caught the attention of the museum's leadership. Emily pulled her aside one afternoon with exciting news. "We've been invited to a high-profile event in Paris," Emily said. "It's an opportunity to showcase our latest restoration work, and I want you to come with me." Rosa's eyes widened. "Paris? I've never even been out of the country." "There's a first time for everything," Emily said with a smile. "And I think this could be a turning point for you." Rosa hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "I'll do it." Cliffhanger. As Rosa prepared for the trip, a courier arrived at the museum with an urgent letter addressed to her. The envelope bore no return address, and inside was a single sheet of paper with a chilling message. "You think you've escaped, but you haven't. I know everything about you. V." Rosa's hands trembled as she clutched the letter. Vanessa's reach was longer than she had imagined, and the fight was far from over. Paris was everything Rosa had dreamed of and more. The city hummed with an energy that seemed to weave itself into the cobblestone streets, the soaring architecture, and the whispers of history that lingered in every corner. Yet, despite the beauty of her surroundings, Rosa couldn't shake the unease brought on by Vanessa's chilling letter. She tried to focus on the work. Emily had been clear. The Paris exhibition was a career-defining moment for both of them. Rosa threw herself into the meticulous preparations, ensuring every detail of the showcased restorations was perfect. But the weight of Vanessa's threats followed her like a shadow. A strange encounter. Late one evening, after finishing her work at the exhibition hall, Rosa decided to walk back to her hotel instead of taking a cab. The streets of Paris were quieter at night, the glow of streetlights reflecting off the Seine. As she crossed a bridge, she noticed a man in a dark coat lingering near the opposite end. Something about him felt off. His posture was too rigid, his gaze too focused. Rosa quickened her pace, her heart pounding. Suddenly, the man stepped into her path. "Ms. Martinez," he said, his voice low and unsteady. "A word." Rosa froze, her instincts screaming for her to run. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "I work for someone who's concerned about you," he replied. "Vanessa." Rosa's pulse quickened. "If you're here to intimidate me, "You're wasting your time." The man sighed. "Listen, I'm just the messenger. My employer doesn't take kindly to loose ends. You might want to reconsider how much attention you're drawing." With that, he slipped a folded piece of paper into her hand and disappeared into the night. Rosa opened it with shaking hands. The message was simple but chilling. "Keep your head down, or else." Emily's discovery. The next morning, Rosa arrived at the exhibition hall visibly shaken. Emily, ever perceptive, noticed immediately. "What happened?" Emily asked, pulling Rosa aside. Rosa hesitated. She didn't want to drag Emily into Vanessa's vendetta, but the weight of the threats was becoming too much to bear. Finally, she handed Emily the note. Emily's face darkened as she read it. "Vanessa," she said, her voice hard. "She doesn't know when to quit." "You knew she might do something like this?" Rosa asked, surprised. Emily sighed. "I've dealt with people like her before. Wealth and power make them think they're untouchable. But she's overplaying her hand. We'll handle this." "How?" Rosa asked, her voice tinged with both hope and doubt. Emily smiled, a dangerous glint in her eye. "You'll see." Vanessa's web of manipulation. Back in New York, Vanessa was growing increasingly frustrated. Her attempts to intimidate Rosa weren't having the desired effect. Worse, Jamie's quiet support of Rosa was becoming impossible to ignore. "Find something I can use against her," Vanessa barked into the phone, addressing her investigator. "There has to be something, anything." But the investigator's response wasn't what she wanted to hear. "I've looked into her past. She's clean. No criminal record, no scandals. She's just hardworking." Vanessa's grip on the phone tightened. "Then dig deeper." The Paris revelation. Rosa's breakthrough came on the night of the exhibition opening. Dressed in a simple but elegant dress Emily had insisted she wear, Rosa found herself mingling with some of the most influential figures in the art world. As she explained her role in the restoration process, she felt a confidence she hadn't known she possessed. One guest in particular seemed captivated by her story, a sharp-eyed woman named Claire Moreau, who introduced herself as the editor of a prominent European architecture magazine. "You've worked on artifacts, but your passion is buildings?" Claire asked, her French accent lilting. "Yes," Rosa admitted. "I studied architecture back home, but I never had the chance to pursue it." Claire's smile was warm. "Perhaps it's time to change that. I'd like to feature your work and your story in our next issue. People need to hear about talents like yours." Rosa was stunned. "Are you serious?" "Completely," Claire said. "You have a unique perspective, and I think it's time the world saw it." Vanessa strikes back. The next morning, Rosa's newfound optimism was shattered when she received a frantic call from Miguel. "Rosa," he said, his voice panicked. "Someone called the school and claimed you're involved in illegal activity. They're threatening to revoke my scholarship." Rosa's blood ran cold. "What? That's not true. Who would do something like that?" But she already knew the answer. Vanessa's reach extended even farther than Rosa had feared. Jamie's confession. Desperate, Rosa called Jamie. "She's attacking my family now," Rosa said, her voice breaking. "I don't know what to do." Jamie sighed heavily. "I was afraid of this. Vanessa doesn't know when to stop." "Why are you helping me?" Rosa asked, her voice tinged with frustration. "You're her husband." Jamie's tone softened. "Vanessa and I haven't been partners in a long time, Rosa. I admire your courage, your integrity. You remind me of the person I used to be before all this wealth made me complacent." There was a pause before he added, "And maybe I'm tired of letting her win." Plan takes shape. With Jamie's support and Emily's connections, Rosa began to piece together a plan to turn the tables on Vanessa. Emily suggested leveraging Claire Moreau's magazine feature, not just to highlight Rosa's talents, but to expose Vanessa's toxic behavior. "Public perception is her greatest weakness," Emily explained. "If we shine a light on what she's done, her power will start to crumble." Rosa hesitated. "Won't that make her more dangerous?" "Possibly," Emily admitted. "But it'll also make her vulnerable. And you'll have us backing you up. Rosa nodded. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't facing Vanessa alone. Cliffhanger. As Rosa prepared to meet with Claire for the magazine interview, she received another anonymous text. You're making a mistake. Stop now or you'll regret it. Rosa's hands trembled as she stared at the message. Vanessa was more desperate and more dangerous than ever. But Rosa knew she couldn't back down now. Too much was at stake. Rosa stepped into the cafe where she was scheduled to meet Claire Moreau. The charming Parisian bistro buzzed with quiet energy, but Rosa felt like a storm was brewing just beneath the surface of her life. The anonymous threats, Miguel's scholarship jeopardy, and Vanessa's escalating desperation weighed heavily on her shoulders. Claire greeted her warmly, her piercing eyes sharp with curiosity and intelligence. Rosa, it's a pleasure to see you again. I've been looking forward to hearing your story. Rosa smiled, though nerves fluttered in her stomach. She wasn't just telling her story. She was stepping into a world that Vanessa would do anything to keep her from reaching. The interview. Claire's questions started simple, focusing on Rosa's work at the museum and her passion for architecture. Rosa's confidence grew as she spoke about her journey, from her studies in her home country to her struggles as an immigrant in a foreign land. But then Claire shifted gears. You mentioned working for the Kensington family. Tell me, what was that experience like? Rosa hesitated. She knew this was the moment Emily had prepared her for, the moment she could reveal Vanessa's cruelty and manipulation. But it was also the moment that could provoke Vanessa into taking even more drastic measures. Working for the Kensingtons taught me resilience, Rosa said carefully. But I realized something important while I was there. People in positions of power don't always use it responsibly. Sometimes, they see others as tools instead of people. Claire leaned in, sensing the weight behind Rosa's words. Would you say that's true of Vanessa Kensington? Rosa took a deep breath. Yes, but I also believe that standing up to someone like her is what made me stronger. It's what brought me here. Claire's eyes sparkled with admiration. This story is going to resonate with so many people. You're an inspiration, Rosa. Vanessa's sabotage. As Rosa and Claire finalized the details of the article, Vanessa was already working behind the scenes to crush the feature before it could see the light of day. She had learned about Claire's magazine and its prestige, and she knew an exposé involving Rosa could damage her reputation irreparably. Vanessa picked up the phone and dialed one of her many powerful contacts. I need you to pull some strings, she said, her voice icy. The next issue of Eclat Architectural. Make sure it doesn't include anything about Rosa Martinez. Her contact hesitated. That might draw attention, Vanessa. Are you sure it's worth the risk? I don't pay you to question me, Vanessa snapped. Just make it happen. A surprising ally. That evening, Rosa returned to her hotel room to find a note slipped under her door. Her heart sank, expecting another threat, but when she opened it, the message was different. Vanessa doesn't control everything. There are people watching who want to help you. Stay strong. A friend. The mysterious note reignited a flicker of hope in Rosa. Whoever this friend was, they seemed to be working against Vanessa, though their identity remained a mystery. The twist at the gala. 2 nights later, Rosa and Emily attended a prestigious gala held at the Louvre, where the museum's restoration work was being showcased. Rosa's nerves were on edge, but Emily's calm reassurance helped steady her. As they mingled with guests, Rosa was approached by a familiar figure, Jamie Kensington. Jamie? Rosa said, surprised. What are you doing here? I have my ways, Jamie said with a wink. I came to see how you're doing, and to warn you. Rosa tensed. About Vanessa? Jamie nodded. She's trying to bury the article, but I have a plan to make sure it gets published. Before Rosa could respond, Vanessa herself appeared, her presence like a storm cloud darkening the room. She was all smiles for the crowd, but when her eyes locked on Rosa, her mask slipped, revealing cold fury. Well, Vanessa said smoothly. Rosa, still chasing dreams that are out of your reach. Rosa held her ground, her voice steady. Not chasing, Vanessa. Achieving. Vanessa's smile turned brittle. Enjoy it while it lasts. A public unraveling. What Vanessa didn't know was that Jamie had orchestrated a coup of his own. During the gala, he arranged for a series of leaked documents to be anonymously delivered to several journalists in attendance. The files detailed Vanessa's years of mistreating employees, including testimonies from former staff who had been emboldened by Rosa's story. The journalists worked quickly, and by the end of the evening, whispers about Vanessa's cruelty were already circulating among the elite. Vanessa, oblivious to the brewing storm, continued to mingle, basking in her own sense of superiority. But when a journalist approached her with a pointed question about her treatment of Rosa, Vanessa's composure began to crack. "I have no idea what you're talking about," Vanessa snapped, her voice rising. "This is absurd." But the journalist persisted. "Several sources have come forward. Would you like to comment on the accusations?" Vanessa's face turned pale as she realized she was losing control of the narrative. Cliffhanger. As Rosa watched the scene unfold from across the room, Emily leaned over and whispered, "This is just the beginning. You've shaken her foundation." But Rosa's victory felt bittersweet. While Vanessa was beginning to face consequences for her actions, Rosa couldn't shake the feeling that the battle wasn't over. Vanessa was still dangerous, and Rosa knew that desperate people were capable of anything. The question was, what would Vanessa do next? Vanessa Kensington was cornered, but she wasn't defeated. As the whispers at the gala grew louder, she retreated to a quiet corner and pulled out her phone. Her fingers flew across the screen, summoning reinforcements in the form of high-powered lawyers and media consultants. Damage control would be expensive, but Vanessa had no intention of letting her carefully crafted image crumble without a fight. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on Rosa, who was talking with Emily and Jamie. The sight of them together sent a fresh wave of fury through her. "You think you've won?" she muttered under her breath. "Think again." Rosa's moment in the spotlight. The following day, the Paris exhibition was a roaring success, thanks in no small part to Rosa's meticulous work and Emily's expert curation. Rosa's name appeared in several glowing reviews, and her story began circulating online, amplified by Claire Moreau's upcoming feature in Eclat Architectural. Rosa felt a sense of pride and validation she hadn't experienced in years. For the first time, she began to believe she had truly left her old life behind. But the shadows of Vanessa's threats still loomed. Jamie's warning played on a loop in her mind. Vanessa wouldn't let this go, and Rosa knew he was right. The public backlash. Back in New York, the leaked testimonies from Vanessa's former staff went viral. Social media exploded with hashtags like #VanessaExposed and #JusticeForRosa. News outlets picked up the story, and public opinion turned sharply against Vanessa. The once admired socialite was now seen as a ruthless bully who exploited those beneath her. Jamie watched the fallout with a mix of satisfaction and concern. While he was glad Vanessa's tyranny was finally being exposed, he knew how vindictive she could be when backed into a corner. "I have to keep an eye on her," Jamie muttered to himself. "For Rosa's sake." A twist in the tale. As Rosa prepared for her flight back to New York, she received an unexpected message from Claire Moreau. The magazine wanted to fast-track her feature, publishing it ahead of schedule to capitalize on the buzz surrounding Vanessa's downfall. "This could cement your reputation," Claire said over the phone. "Are you ready for that kind of exposure?" Rosa hesitated. The idea of being thrust further into the spotlight was daunting, but she also saw it as an opportunity to solidify her new path. "I'm ready," Rosa said finally. Vanessa's last-ditch effort. Vanessa, meanwhile, had uncovered the source of the leaks. Jamie. Her husband's betrayal was the final straw. Some common goals. The reveal. As they spoke, Rosa couldn't ignore the sense of familiarity in Nathaniel's words. He seemed to know more about her journey than he let on. When she mentioned the mysterious messages and assistance she'd received, Nathaniel's expression softened. "That was you, wasn't it?" Rosa asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and disbelief. Nathaniel hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but it wasn't about interfering. It was about ensuring that someone with your potential didn't get crushed by people who misuse their power. Rosa blinked, taken aback. Why? Nathaniel's gaze was steady. Because I've been in your shoes. I know what it's like to fight for a dream while others try to tear you down. And I believe in helping those who can create lasting change. Vanessa's quiet surrender. Across town, Vanessa Kensington's life had settled into an unrecognizable rhythm. The mansion was sold, the foundation dissolved, and the once indomitable socialite was now living in a modest townhouse. She spent her days in solitude, reflecting on the choices that had led to her downfall. One day, Vanessa saw a news segment featuring Rosa, showcasing her latest project. To Vanessa's surprise, she didn't feel anger, only regret. For the first time, she wondered what might have happened if she had nurtured Rosa's potential instead of trying to destroy it. Vanessa reached for her phone but hesitated. Apologizing wouldn't undo the damage, and she doubted Rosa would want to hear from her. With a sigh, Vanessa set the phone aside. Redemption, she realized, would have to come from actions, not words. A shared vision. Back at the gala, Nathaniel outlined an ambitious idea. What if we took your urban renewal concept global? Places like South America, Southeast Asia, and even parts of Europe could benefit from your approach. Rosa's eyes lit up. That's always been my dream, to create spaces that uplift communities everywhere. Nathaniel smiled. Then let's make it happen. I'll provide the resources and connections, and you bring the vision. It was a partnership Rosa hadn't expected, but one that felt right. For the first time, she saw the possibility of expanding her work beyond borders, turning her personal triumph into a global movement. A call from the past. Later that night, as Rosa returned to her apartment, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Sometimes the best way to move forward is to forgive the past. V. Rosa stared at the message, her emotions swirling. Could Vanessa be reaching out, seeking redemption? Or was this another game? After everything, Rosa wasn't sure she was ready to forgive. But she also knew that holding on to anger wouldn't serve her future. With a deep breath, Rosa replied simply, "Thank you. I hope you find peace." Cliffhanger. As Rosa prepared for the next phase of her journey, she stood in her office, looking at a map of the world. She placed pins in cities where her work had already made an impact, then added new pins for the places Nathaniel had suggested. The future was vast and filled with possibilities. Yet, as she stared at the map, a sense of foreboding crept in. Success brought its own challenges, and while Vanessa might have stepped back, Rosa knew there were others in the world who wouldn't hesitate to stand in her way. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a different message. Power attracts enemies. Be ready. A friend. Rosa clenched her fists, her resolve stronger than ever. Whatever lay ahead, she was ready to face it. Rosa Martinez was on the precipice of something extraordinary. Her partnership with Nathaniel Pierce had opened doors she'd never dreamed possible. Together, they began laying the groundwork for an ambitious project, a network of community-focused architectural initiatives spanning the globe. The initiative, called Foundation for Futures, was a blend of sustainable design, affordable housing, and social upliftment. But as the spotlight grew brighter, so did the stakes. A new rival emerges. Success, Rosa had learned, was never without its complications. With her newfound prominence came whispers of envy and resistance from powerful figures in the industry who saw her as an outsider challenging their status quo. One such figure was Gregory DeVries, a titan in the architecture world and a fierce advocate of profit-driven development. DeVries had made a fortune transforming struggling neighborhoods into lucrative real estate hubs, often at the expense of the communities who lived there. When news of Rosa's global initiative reached him, DeVries saw it as a direct threat. Idealistic nonsense, he scoffed during a board meeting. If this Foundation for Futures takes off, it'll disrupt everything we've built. His solution: crush the competition before it gained too much momentum. An unexpected partnership. As Rosa and Nathaniel prepared to launch the foundation, they received a surprising message from Evelyn Cross, the CEO who had initially invited Rosa into her circle. Evelyn proposed a collaboration between her firm and the foundation. "We can amplify your vision," Evelyn said during a meeting. "Our resources, combined with your passion, could create something truly transformative." Rosa was hesitant. While Evelyn had supported her work in the past, she wasn't sure about tying her vision to such a powerful corporation. Nathaniel, however, saw the potential. "It's a calculated risk," Nathaniel said later. "But the scale of what we can achieve with Evelyn's backing might outweigh the dangers." Rosa ultimately agreed, but not without setting strict terms to ensure her independence. Vanessa's quiet redemption. Meanwhile, Vanessa Kensington was undergoing a transformation of her own. Stripped of her wealth and influence, she began volunteering at a local community center, initially as a way to pass the time. But over weeks and months, Vanessa found herself connecting with people she had once dismissed. One day, she came across an article about Rosa's global initiative. Seeing the magnitude of Rosa's work forced Vanessa to confront her own failures. For the first time, she felt a flicker of admiration for the woman she had once tried to destroy. Vanessa decided to reach out, not to interfere but to support. Quietly, she began donating the little she had left to projects aligned with Rosa's mission. DeVries strikes. As Foundation for Futures prepared to unveil its first international project in Sao Paulo, Gregory DeVries launched a covert campaign to discredit Rosa and Nathaniel. Using his vast network, he spread rumors of mismanagement and financial impropriety within the foundation. The accusations weren't backed by evidence, but they were enough to sow doubt among potential investors. Rosa and Nathaniel were blindsided. "We can't let this derail us," Rosa said, frustration bubbling beneath her calm demeanor. "We need to show the world what we're doing is real and transparent." Nathaniel nodded. "Then we'll fight fire with truth." Public reckoning. The foundation hosted a live-streamed event showcasing their work in Sao Paulo. Rosa took the stage, her voice steady and impassioned as she walked the audience through every step of the project. From the collaboration with local architects to the sustainable materials used in construction. But the most powerful moment came when Rosa introduced the residents of the new housing complex. Families shared their stories, speaking about how the project had transformed their lives. The authenticity of their testimonials was undeniable, and the event quickly went viral. DeVries, watching from his penthouse, realized his smear campaign had failed. For the first time, he felt the ground beneath him shift. Vanessa's anonymous gift. During the Sao Paulo event, Rosa received a package marked confidential. Inside was a detailed dossier exposing Gregory DeVries's unethical practices, land grabs, forced evictions, and environmental violations. The documents were accompanied by a note. "Use this carefully. The truth is on your side." Rosa's heart raced. She hadn't expected Vanessa to resurface, let alone help her. After a moment's hesitation, she handed the dossier to Nathaniel. "We need to verify this," she said. "If it's real, it could change everything." The final showdown. With the dossier authenticated, Rosa and Nathaniel held a press conference to reveal DeVries's corruption. The evidence was damning, and public outrage was swift. DeVries faced legal investigations and lost key investors, marking the beginning of the end for his empire. As the dust settled, Rosa reflected on the unexpected turn of events. Vanessa's involvement had been crucial, and though Rosa still harbored resentment, she began to see Vanessa in a new light. A global legacy. With DeVries out of the way, the foundation flourished. Rosa's projects expanded to cities across the globe, each one a testament to the power of collaboration and community-focused design. Nathaniel became a trusted partner, and Evelyn's firm honored its commitment to support the foundation without compromising its values. One evening, Rosa received a letter, this time from Vanessa herself. It read, "Rosa, I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope my actions can speak louder than my mistakes. Thank you for proving me wrong. Vanessa." Rosa folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. She wasn't ready to forgive entirely, but she appreciated the gesture. Vanessa had found her own way to redemption, and that was enough. Bright ending. As Rosa stood on stage at an awards ceremony honoring her contributions to sustainable architecture, she looked out at the audience. Among the crowd, she saw familiar faces. Emily, Jamie, Nathaniel, and even Vanessa, sitting quietly in the back. Rosa's journey had been anything but easy, but it had brought her to this moment. A moment not just of recognition, but of purpose. She knew the challenges would never truly end, but she also knew she was ready to face them. Because Rosa Martinez wasn't just building structures. She was building a legacy. The end.